Today's lesson is A Thirst for History. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our program. I'm Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And today we're thirsty. We've been exercising and we've been working really hard. So we have worked up a thirst. So we'd like to get something to drink.
Right, especially these days when it's really hot outside and usually you're thirsty and sweaty and all you want is a nice cold drink to cool down. But I know that here in Taiwan, many people say that you shouldn't drink cold drinks or icy drinks. You should stick with warm or room temperature drinks.
That's probably good advice, but of course sometimes it just tastes so good to have something really cold on a hot summer's day. Of course now it's December, but we still have hot days from time to time, especially if you're down there in Tainan, Kaohsiung, and Pingdong. But today we're going to talk about the origin of some drinks that you might enjoy. Okay, we've got an exercise drink or an athletic drink or something called Pocari Sweat, and also we're going to talk about Coca-Cola and 7-Up. We'll talk about those in our next program, but today we'll talk about Pocari Sweat, which is kind of like Gatorade, right?
Right. It's a Japanese-made drink that athletes drink, a lot of runners, or if you just come from a gym, it's good to have a Pocari Sweat. And yeah, it's like the Japanese version of the American Gatorade.
Exactly. So those are drinks basically that can help you with your exercise program. So let's get to it. Let's begin our lesson by reading the first part, and we'll come back to talk about it.
A thirst for history. Imagine that it's a hot day and you're absolutely parched. What you really want is a tall glass of something refreshing. Perhaps you fancy a Coca-Cola or a 7-Up, or maybe you're in the mood for a Pocari. While you enjoy your drink, let's look at the origins of these beverages, for their stories might surprise you.
大家好，第一部分我们看到单字 refreshing 这个字是形容词，指清凉的、提神的。例如 You should ask Lena for her great recipes for refreshing summer drinks. 你应该问 Lena 她是怎么做出好喝的清凉夏日饮料。或是 After all that exercise, I think it's time for a nice refreshing shower. 做完那些运动后，我想该好好冲个澡提振精神了。另外，除了上面的意思，这个字还可以指让人耳目一新的。举例来说 Working outdoors was a refreshing change for Alan. 在户外工作对 Alan 来说是一个耳目一新的改变。而这个字去掉字尾 ing 就成了动词 refresh， 指使恢复精神、更新，像是 A short break will refresh you, and then you can continue to work. 短暂休息能使你恢复精神，然后你就可以继续工作。或是 Before this exam, Tom refreshed his memory by reading the textbook. 考试前 Tom 读课本唤起记忆。接着我们看到片语 in the mood 表示想要、有意。例如 Sam was in the mood for pizza, but his brother wanted to get Mexican food. Sam 想吃 pizza, 可是他弟弟想吃墨西哥食物。或是 Although it was Annie's birthday, she wasn't in the mood to celebrate. 虽然那天是 Annie 的生日，但她没有心情庆祝。
And welcome back. So today's topic is a thirst for history, or that is the title of today's lesson, I should say. And we're going to talk about a popular drink called Pocari Sweat. Now, diving right in, the first line says, imagine that it's a hot day and you're absolutely parched. So imagine that it's very hot, you're sweating, and you're absolutely, that is completely parched. Absolutely is just another way of saying completely. It's used for emphasis. So, for instance, I could say, I am absolutely tired from the long hike. I am very, very tired. So, when that happens, when you're absolutely parched, what you want is a tall glass of something refreshing. Something that's refreshing is something that makes you feel more alive, more lively when you're really hot and tired.
And also thirsty. Remember, thirsty is the adjective for the sensation you have when you need something to drink if you've been out in hot weather or if you have been exercising, you're going to be thirsty. That's what we say. Oh, I'm so thirsty. I really need to have a glass of water. And in the title, the word thirst is the noun. That is when you want to drink something. And remember, if you want to eat something, we talk about having a hunger for food, or you could say, oh, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. But here you're thirsty because, hey, it's absolutely parched outside and you'd like to have something that is refreshing. You drink it and it gives you that feeling of being refreshed. Now, perhaps you fancy a Coca-Cola or a 7-Up, or maybe you're in the mood for a Pocari. Okay, so here we've got the word fancy. Doesn't fancy refer to something that is like really extra special, like a fancy restaurant or something?
Yeah, it could mean that if you're using the word as an adjective, but here fancy is being used as a verb, and it basically means to like something, to desire, to want something. So you can fancy a Coca-Cola, or you can just desire or want a Coca-Cola to drink, or a 7-Up, or maybe you're in the mood for Pocari. So to be in the mood is to want something or to feel like doing something, quite similar to the verb to fancy. So an example of the use of in the mood could be, I'm in the mood for a movie. How about you?
Yeah, that doesn't sound like such a bad idea. Or I'm in the mood to hear some salsa music. I'd like to dance the salsa. And while you enjoy your drink, let's look at the origins of these beverages. Yes, maybe you've gone to the refrigerator or you've stopped by your local convenience store and picked up something to drink. So yes, you've just popped it open and you're going to enjoy your beverage. So while you do that, we're going to take a look at the origins of some of these beverages, because their stories might surprise you. Now, here we've got the word beverage as just a fancy way of saying drink.
That's right. You might hear the word said by a server, a waiter or waitress, or while you're on a flight in an airplane, somebody might ask you, would you like a beverage? May I offer you a beverage? And that could include anything from coffee, tea, sodas, to alcoholic drinks like a beer or even champagne. So it's just another way of saying drink, but it's usually heard in specific contexts.
Okay, let's talk about some of these origins of these beverages. First, we're going to talk about Pocari Sweat. Let's find out what this is all about.
Pocari Sweat. The youngest of the three brands is Pocari Sweat, which turns 40 this year. The inspiration for this drink began with Rokuro Harima, an employee of the Japanese pharmaceutical company Otsuka. When Harima ended up at the hospital one day because of food poisoning, his doctors advised him to drink some soda to regain his energy. At the hospital, Harima saw a doctor sip from a bag of IV solution to replace some of the salts he had lost from sweating while performing an operation. That was when Harima had a light bulb moment. Why not create a tasty drink that would do the job of an IV solution? He proposed the idea to Otsuka, and soon Pocari Sweat was born. It consists of almost the same ingredients as human sweat, but with sugar and citrus juice added to make it taste good.
第二部分我们看到一个单字 inspiration， 这个字是名词，指灵感、启发，给人灵感的人事物。举例来说， As a fashion designer, Sheila tends to draw inspiration from traditional costumes. 作为一名时尚设计师 Sheila 经常从传统服饰中汲取灵感，或是 Jody is an inspiration for all dancers. 所有的舞者都从 Jody 身上受到鼓舞。另外，这个字的字尾加上 al 就成了形容词 inspirational， 指启发灵感的、鼓舞人心的。例如 The famous actor gave an inspirational speech at the university graduation ceremony. 那位知名演员在该大学毕业典礼上发表了鼓舞人心的演说。再来，我们看到名词 operation， 当可数名词时指的是手术。例如 The patient needs an operation to fix his knee problem. 该名病患需要接受手术来治疗他膝盖的问题。而这个字当不可数名词时指的是运作，像是 The captain is responsible for all aspects of his ship's operation. 船长要负责船上各方面的运作。最后我们看到单字 citrus， 这个字是名词，指柑橘类水果。举例来说， Penny likes citrus flavored drinks。 Penny 喜欢柑橘类水果口味的饮料。
So we're going to talk first about Pocari Sweat, and it says here the youngest of the three brands, since we're talking about Pocari Sweat, Coca-Cola, and 7-Up. The youngest of the three brands is Pocari Sweat, which turns 40 this year. Now, the inspiration for this drink began with Rokuro Harima, an employee of the Japanese pharmaceutical company Otsuka.
Indeed, so that's where it came from. I kind of knew that it was a Japanese beverage. They always have interesting names for their beverages or for their products. So again, we've got the inspiration for this drink coming from Rokuro Harima. Okay, inspiration just refers to something that gives you an idea. You see that thing or you feel that thing and you get an idea. Oh, that's a cool thing. Maybe if I do it this way, then that will be more interesting. So yes, you're stimulated to do or feel something. You might get some inspiration to become a painter, for example, if you travel to France and go to art museums there. Oh, I've had so much inspiration. I want to be just like Picasso.
That's right. And in this particular case, Rokuro Harima had the inspiration of creating Pocari Sweat when he was an employee of the Japanese pharmaceutical company Otsuka. So a pharmaceutical company is a company that makes medicine or hospital-related products, drug-related products. So Rokuro Harima was an employee at a pharmaceutical company, and that is not something that I would have imagined. I would have imagined him as working for a food company or something like that.
Indeed, a food and beverage company, perhaps. Not a pharmaceutical company. Pharmaceutical is the adjective. A pharmacy is like a drugstore or the chemist's where you go to buy prescription medicine or other over-the-counter medications. A pharmacy. And a pharmacist is somebody who studies this and knows all about medicine and things like that. My wife's niece is a pharmacist in New York City, for example. And when Harima ended up at the hospital one day because of food poisoning, his doctors advised him to drink some soda to regain his energy. Now, soda, that's kind of a fizzy drink, right?
Yes, soda can refer to any fizzy drink, and it doesn't have to be sweet. You can also drink soda water, which is basically water with bubbles, fizzy water. And often when you get food poisoning, you will lose a lot of liquid, a lot of fluid in your body because you vomit or you have diarrhea. And so the doctor advised him to drink some soda to regain his energy because getting food poisoning can also make you feel very unenergetic.
And at the hospital, Harima saw a doctor sip from a bag of IV solution to replace some of the salts he had lost from sweating while performing an operation. I've never heard of doctors actually sneaking a sip from an IV solution bag. I'm not sure they're supposed to do that, but that's what Harima saw. The doctor was kind of taking a sip from a bag of IV solution, and I guess now we know what is in those IV solutions. That's that bag that hangs on a little hook or something when you're in the hospital, and then it goes down a tube into your arm.
Right. A lot of patients, when they get admitted to hospitals, may not be able to drink from their mouth. So they're hooked up to an IV solution so that they can remain hydrated. They can have enough fluid in their body so they don't get dehydrated or they don't get thirsty or they don't get enough fluids in their bodies. So in this particular case, a doctor was sipping from an IV solution, evidently because he was sweating a lot and he was very thirsty because he had just performed an operation. So an operation is the process that a doctor performs of cutting into somebody's body for medical reasons. So you might need an operation to take out, to remove, for instance, a tumor in your stomach. Hopefully that never happens, but it could happen. Operations are performed often to save lives.
Indeed, an operation, and of course, to operate is the verb. The doctor is going to operate and try to remove the tumor to save the patient's life. And the doctor was sweating because, hey, doing an operation can be quite stressful. So yes, doctors will sweat just like the rest of us will. And that was when Harima had a light bulb moment. He had some inspiration there. And why not create a tasty drink that would do the job of an IV solution was the question he was asking himself. So here we've got a light bulb moment. Ding! I guess in Western culture, when somebody has an idea, it's like a light bulb turning on. They get this idea and they think, Eureka! I've found it. I have an idea. Why didn't I think of that before?
Right. Or you can also think of the cartoons that we used to watch on television, Bugs Bunny or Tom and Jerry. Sometimes you'll see the character with the light bulb going off above his head, and that's supposed to signal the fact that that character just had a really good idea, and then the story goes on. So that's a light bulb moment. And so Rokuro Harima had a light bulb moment when he saw this doctor sip from an IV solution. And since he works for a pharmaceutical company, everything seemed to come together. He thought to himself, why not create a tasty drink that would do the job of an IV solution? So he proposed the idea to Otsuka, his company, and soon Pocari Sweat was born.
So here the guy proposed this idea to his boss, I guess, and the rest is history here. Well, what is Pocari Sweat? What does it consist of?
So, Pocari Sweat, here it says it consists of almost the same ingredients as human sweat, but with sugar and citrus juice added to make it taste good. Now, that sounds pretty strange. I don't know if anybody would want to drink something that tastes like human sweat. However, it does consist of almost the same ingredients as human sweat. And to consist of here means to be made of particular things, or it could also be made of particular people. For instance, a group. I could say the group consists of 5 members. So this particular drink, Pocari Sweat, consists of almost the same ingredients as human sweat. And here ingredients are the substances that are combined with one another to make something else. So I could say, for instance, sugar is an ingredient that is commonly used for making cakes.
Sugar and flour and eggs and yeast and stuff like that, those are the ingredients that we use to make a cake, at least as far as I remember from my home ec classes back in junior high. And yes, consist of, that's what it has as its ingredients. I could say, for example, my exercise program consists of weightlifting, jogging, and stretching. Those different kinds of activities make up my exercise program. So citrus means having to do with certain kinds of fruits like lemons and oranges and grapefruit, stuff like that.
Right. It could also refer to the tree, the lemon tree or orange tree. So citrus is something that is related to these particular fruits.
Indeed. So there you have it. That's the origin of Pocari Sweat. Run down to your local convenience store and gulp down a can right now. That is, if you have been doing some exercising or are hot and sweaty from a hot day. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today, but we need to hear once again from our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点，读到课文第一部分的最后一句。 While you enjoy your drink, let's look at the origins of these beverages. For their stories might surprise you. 好，句子里面的 for 在这边它是当连接词哦，它表达因为什么什么，由于什么什么。那么 for 这个用法后面是要接子句，那它是在补充说明对方不知道的理由或是讯息，所以 for 引导子句呢，它必须摆在主要子句的后面。那它是比较正式的用法，比较常会出现在文学作品里面。好，那课文的第二部分是关于宝矿力水得的起源。有一个句子他写到 When Harima ended up at the hospital one day because of food poisoning, his doctors advised him to drink some soda to regain his energy. 好，句子里面的 food poisoning 就是指食物中毒。那我们这边要介绍的是片语动词 end up 的用法。 end up 它表示最后处于某个状况，结果怎么样怎么样，常常用来表达在非预期情况下以某个出乎意料的结果告终。那特别注意 end up 是不及物用法，我们后面要接补语，这个补语可以是名词、形容词、现在分词、过去分词、介系词片语等等。好，像课文里面的ended up at the hospital 就是以介系词片语来当补语用。我们来造2个例句。The letter ended up in the trash can. 那封信最后出现在垃圾桶里，我们这边就是用介系词片语。好 Melvin originally wanted to be a lawyer, but he ended up working in the travel industry. Melvin 本来想当律师，但他最后却是在旅游业工作。那我们这边 ended up 后面接的是 working， 以现在分词来当补语。好，那有一个片语叫做 wind up。Wind 这个字就是跟风 wind 是同一个字哦，只是它当动词念 wind。wind 它本来有转动，像转动把手或者是缠绕，使什么迂回的意思。它的动词三态是 wind, wound, wound。那么片语 wind up 它字面有这种卷起、绞紧，像我们台语说个嘎好安的那种意思。好，那它当不及物用的时候，可以表达结果怎么样，以什么告终，落得什么样的结果。就跟 end up 的意思及用法一样。例如 They wound up spending the entire day at home because of the heavy rain. 因为下大雨关系，结果他们整天都待在家里，没有出门。好，另外 wind up 也有使什么结束，或者是整理并且做总结的意思。那它的及物用法 wind up something 或是 wind something up 就可以表达把什么什么做结束。有时候你可能会听到 Let's wind up the meeting and get back to work， 就是说我们把会议做结束，回去工作吧。好，以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Absolutely. I didn't have any breakfast, and now I'm absolutely starving. Refreshing. Lemonade is a refreshing drink for summer days.Inspiration. The inspiration for this painting was the beautiful scenery the artist was surrounded by. Operation. The doctor is performing an operation on the patient to restore his sight. Ingredient. Most sodas contain ingredients such as corn syrup and food coloring.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.